Hi, I'm Jim Raffle. Welcome to this week's episode of the Jim and Shelby Show, All Things Print Podcast. I am joined by
Shelby Sopusik, and we are coming to you from sunny Phoenix and very hot Phoenix.
Yes, it is a little bit hot, but we have a really cool checklist for you today.
Okay.
And it's a checklist of items you need to build a custom ICC profile.
And it's interesting because before we go on a consulting job, we do either send an email or get on the phone and talk to our client and say, hey, here are the things that we need. But I guess in some cases it's still not very clear.
Yeah, and I get it. I mean, we do this all the time and we make assumptions. And so I think part of the purpose of this episode is to get those assumptions out in the open so that maybe we stop making them. And also, so if you're trying to build custom profiles, you don't end up where we end up sometimes with a client where we're missing a key piece. And so we're going to assume that you have some kind of a printer or device to output the necessary targets to build the profile. That's an assumption. So maybe an inkjet printer. And we're going to assume that you have some kind of RIP software in front of that printer, although that's not essential. It's typically the way that we're going to be talking about this because some people build profiles that they use with Photoshop or something like that. But we're focusing on people building profiles for production environments using RIP software. Okay?
Fair enough.
So you have to have RIP software. Ideally, that RIP software will support the building of profiles inside of the ecosystem of that RIP. And we're going to circle back to that. And then you need a measuring instrument, a spectrophotometer, which is supported by
the RIP software.
Well, the profiling option of the RIP software.
Yeah, there you go.
And because you might be using an external tool to build your profiles. And so what does that look like? Let's just lay out an example. Say you have a Mamaki printer. That means you may very likely be using the Raster Link RIP.
Right.
The Raster Link RIP internal to itself does not build profiles, but Mamaki sells a package called MPM3, which will build profiles specifically for Raster Link. MPM3 supports, as far as I know, very few instruments, and they're almost all X-Rite instruments. So you're going to want to make sure that you either acquire the software and or work with whoever you're buying it from to make sure you know what instrument will work with your software, right? That's an example.
That's true of a lot of RIPs. Very often there is an add-on or another piece of software that you have to acquire to be able to make a custom ICC profile.
I think it's the most common problem we run into, is that someone has a RIP and they believe it can make profiles. So for example, I'm going to use another one, Flexi. I just ran into a situation where, and I've built profiles with the Flexi RIP numerous times. I've never run into a situation where the Flexi RIP has all of the profiling capabilities. In other words, I can create a linearization, I can create an ink limit, and then I get to the page to build the profile, and all it has is import. And I'm like, what's this? And so apparently they do sell versions of Flexi, which I think it's only to OEMs who distribute it with printers, that will not profile. And so you have to, I don't even know what you have to do. You probably have to reach out to Flexi or the printer manufacturer and get some kind of an upgrade that enables your profiling. Now, that's another great example because that RIP, like Wasatch, which I may or may not talk about in more detail, you can get around this because it does have the ability to import a profile. So in that case, you can build your profile all the way through to that point, or your media configuration through to that point. You save it, and then basically inside the RIP, you print using linearization is what they call it. Well, what do I print? You might have a program like i1 Profiler or another ColorLogix Copra. So you may have an external profiling product. You generate the necessary TIFF files from that product, and then you print them with linearization only through the RIP. And that's essentially the same thing you would do with Wasatch. You can do this. I did it with this Flexi situation. By the way, you can do this all the time with Flexi. You can do this with Onyx. If you decide you're not thrilled with the profiling capabilities inside of Onyx, you can go through all the steps in Onyx, just like I did in Flexi. And you get to that last page where you would be printing your profile target, your characterization chart, and you can print your own. You can print one from i1 Profile or a Copra and build your own profile, export internally, and import it. And I have customers who do that, and they do it for very good reasons. But the key is you still got to have all the tools, right?
Right.
one way or another, you have to be able to build that profile inside of Flexi, inside of Onyx, inside of Wasatch. Well, you can't build them inside of Wasatch. Inside of Caldera. Whatever RIP you have, you either have to be able to build the profile internally, which means you're going to have to have purchased that option or bought a package that included that option, or have an external tool like I1 Profiler or Copra. Those are probably the two main external tools right now. And you're going to have that spectrophotometer that works with whatever profiling tool you're using. You guys don't know if you guys can hear it. We are in the flight path for Phoenix Sky Harbor Airport.
Yes, definitely.
It's kind of fun, actually, watching the planes go by. Anything else you can think of you need to build a profile?
I don't know if this is a need, more like a want. For me, I would also want to have some kind of color verification tool at the end. So after you've built that profile, you want some piece of software, some kind of target, so that you can actually validate that profile and see where you are.
I would include that as an essential. And the reason I think that's an essential is that if you're building profiles, and I discuss this with clients all the time, I can come in and build a profile without doing any verification, and it's probably a decent profile. I mean, but the problem is it doesn't conform to any specification. And so as a G7 expert and a G7 expert trainer, I'm going to tell you that I try to build all my profiles to conform to or be as close to conformance to the G7 specification as possible, even if that client is not going to become G7 not qualified as a master printer. I still try and build their profiles that way. And the reason is that when they put a new print head in that printer and they need a new profile, I can build it back to the same specification.
Sure.
Well, the only way I know I have that specification is if I used a verification piece of software, Shelby. So I'm really glad you brought that one up.
Yeah, I think, I mean, that's a piece of the puzzle that we always do. So that's was top of mind to me. And so even if you have us in to build the profile for you and you aren't going to end up building your own ICC profiles in the future, it'd be still advantageous to have some kind of instrument, some kind of verification software, so you know whether or not you need to bring us in again, you know?
Absolutely. I would absolutely agree with that. So, you know, that to me is the essentials as far as physical software, hardware. Obviously, it's nice to know what specification you want to build it to.
You know, and have somebody in your facility with a little bit of color knowledge.
Doesn't hurt.
And sure, we definitely have clients who are like, you know what, I don't care how it happens, just make it happen. But we have a lot more people who want to learn, want to have somebody in their facility who know these things. And at that point, I would say, hey, go get some education. There's some pretty feasible and economical solutions to getting that color knowledge and understanding the steps to making a custom ICC profile and what you need in your shop. You know, everybody's workflow is different, but you know, there are lots of ways to figure out what you need.
They could jump into the store on colorcasters.com and purchase the Confident Color recording.
Oh, so we're going to sell now.
Well, why not? You actually reminded me that there is some pretty good education on demand that we have. There's also equally good programs with certification components available at ilearningplus.org through Printing United Alliance. Shelby and I have contributed to that content as well. And I have one last piece. You should probably have proper viewing conditions in your facility.
Oh, sure.
Something like a D50 light booth would be very nice. It's not a have to have, but it's a it's
good lighting.
It's so close to a have to have that I guess we should include it in the list.
Yep.
So, and with that, I think we're going to wrap this episode up.
Yep. And you know, I'm squinting. It's sunny. I'm melting out here. I'm
a little warm. Yeah.
Yeah.
At 9 minutes and 10 seconds into this, and this is like the 14th take, so maybe a half hour into this, it's time to go.
It is time to go.
We'll see you next episode.